I'm Tom Lai, and I'm with Maple. Maple stands for the Marin Asian American Public Local Employees Group. We have a terrific celebration planned for you today. But first off, I wanted to thank the Board of Supervisors for sponsoring this event. Without their help, it won't be possible. I also want to help the event organizers, including Jacalyn Mah, who I affectionately refer to as Chairman Mah. I've got Jeff Wong there with the camera. Yeah. Marin Viernes. Excellent. Ralph Hernadez in the front. And Becky in, you probably saw the nice Chinese Chongsa outside. So we put together this event for you today. Before we introduce our very special guest of this afternoon, Jacalyn's going to tell you a little bit more about Maple, what we do and what we hope to do. So here you go, Jacalyn.
Thank you, Tom. Hi everyone, welcome. I'm so excited to see all of you here. So I'm Jacalyn Mah, I work for the County Marin. And how Maple really came about was that back in December 2013, last year, a group of 5 of us, Becky, Ralph, Jeff, Tom and I met and really talked about forming a group for Asian American public local employees. What really inspired us was there's been a diversity initiative at the county. And we put on 2 events recently at Viernes, and it has really become the Dream Collaborative. Jose Varela came up with the name, Dream standing for Diversity, Respect, Encouragement, Acceptance, Marin. And through that effort, really we're inspired to create a group for Asian Americans as well. So in February this year, we had our first official event. We invited 40 people to have it public because we always bring people together. And through that, our listserv grew to be about 130 or so people. And I'm really hoping with today, you guys are more than welcome to join our listserv as well. And there's been a core planning committee really trying to think about the agenda for the coming year. So the mission of Maple is really threefold. Professional development, social networking, as well as celebrating Asian heritage, and that's why we're here today. And Maple wouldn't really be here without the guidance of 2 other affinity groups in the county too. One being Ole, Jose is going to talk about that, as well as Comea. Melanie Page has been really a great coach for us too. But Janelle Hampton will be speaking about Comea a little bit. So at this time, I would like to welcome Jose to come up here, as well as Janelle. So take a bite and come up.
Award for best food among the affinity groups. No question. Best food, man. You guys did it. You knocked it out of the park, man. But it's really wonderful to be here. You know, 12 years ago when I first got to the county, there were no affinity groups, and I actually got approached by a person named Marin Gallardo, who worked at the county administrator's office. And she said, look, I've got this dream for this organization called OLE, the Organization of Latino Employees, but I'm going to retire, so here it is. And the goal is, what do we do? And the reality is we created it, and people came. And over 12 years, we had Cesar Chavez events, we had other people. And during those events, people would say, well, I'd love to start an African-American group. I'd love to start an Asian group. And we just said, do it. And the reality is that over that period of time, these things came to fruition. And so this part of the program is really touching to me because it was dreams that were dreamt for me by others that are now being realized for all of us. And the appreciation that we get of being able to share each other's cultural richness, to understand each other in a very different way, is really the essence of what most organizations are finding that affinity groups give. So on behalf of OLE, I want to congratulate Maple. I want to congratulate you for everything you're doing, Jacalyn, the board of Maple. And I know that we're going to collaborate on other events as part of the Dream Coalition or collaboration, and it's going to be great.
Okay, well, I'll try to be as eloquent as Jose, but my name is Janelle, I work in the County Administrator's Office. And I also work on the committee called CAMEA, the County of Marin African American Employees Association. And we're pretty similar to Maple in a way, and we're there to celebrate African American culture as well as provide training and networking opportunities for all county employees. Our next event is actually going to be a June 19th celebration, and so that's actually going to be on June 19th. So we hope that all of you guys will come out and enjoy a good time with us. And I just want to thank Jacalyn for this opportunity and congratulate Maple on this awesome event. Love the food. And we do have a few CAMEA members around. I see Kiana and D'Angelo and Carla, of course. And so we just want to say congratulations and have a great event.
We're also late numbers here. Oh, we got some folks back there, so we're all here supporting each other, so it's great.
Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you. So next, I'd like to introduce a very special guest that is with us today. For the past 4 years, he has been presided as a judge in the Marin County Superior Court in the Criminal Division. He's also had the distinction of being re-elected to the bench by the greatest margin of victory in the state's history, over 82% in 2013. This distinguished gentleman also presides in the Appellate Division, which hears both civil and criminal cases. Prior to that, he's worked as a federal prosecutor for the Department of Justice in Seattle, and then as an assistant district attorney for San Francisco. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce you all to the Honorable Judge James Chou. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you all for coming here today. First of all, I'm not that special, so I don't think that this is going to be something fantastic. I've been asked to come here today to speak about Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and I really have to thank Jacalyn for inviting me here today. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for all of us to take part and enjoy some really good food, which I want to get to as soon as I'm done speaking. But I think it's a chance for us all to think back, reflect, and consider why we're here today. And all of us, I can easily say, come from families of immigrants. It may be one generation ago, it may be you're an immigrant, it may be several generations ago, but we all came here because we left a country, or our relatives left a country, to try to start a new life. And so for that reason, I think when you think about Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, what you're really thinking about is Immigrants Month. It's a time to reflect back, it's a time to think about what the people who decided, our relatives who came over here, why they came over here, and for what reasons, and what they did once they got here, what they did to try to make the most of what they were provided with, given their opportunities, given their limitations, and given a chance to do something different. And so, first of all, it's a chance to acknowledge heritage, and I think we can all do that very easily. It's a chance to take a moment and reflect and thank those who came before us. And it may not have been for the best of reasons, but to nevertheless be thankful, at least, for the opportunity to be here. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, a little bit about my background, because I think it shapes my perspective of what it means to be an immigrant or come from a family of immigrants. My parents were both from mainland China, and they were shaped, I think, most predominantly by World War II. My parents both grew up in an age when their country was at war. And that's something that not many of us can relate to. It's something that I heard about from them on many occasions, but it was what shaped their lives. They came to the United States via Taiwan in the early 1960s. And they had very, very different experiences from those that we've had. Some of them very bad, some of them good, some of them just different. And so that shaped their perspective in coming to the United States. And I think it's important to start there. So what happened was my father was 16 at the time of that he quit school and joined the Army. He joined the Army because of imminent invasion, and that's the path he took at the age of 16. My mother was going to college during World War II, and she has recollections and stories about having a bag next to her bed every night, packed with her most personal possessions, with things of value, with her most important school books. And that bag was ready to go because there was always a chance that they would have to get up, typically in the middle of the night, and relocate. And in fact, she did do that on more than one occasion. She'd hear the sirens ringing, the students would get together, they'd take their one bag, and they'd begin evacuating. So that was my mother's college experience. Very different, I think, from any of ours. That's what shaped them. They had the opportunity in the early 1960s to come to the United States. They both were able to get advanced degrees. And my father was able to get a job. He was actually given 2 job opportunities in the early 1960s, either to go to teach at college at the University of Alaska in Anchorage, or to teach at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. And I'm really, really, really thankful that he chose San Luis Obispo. Not that I wouldn't have minded being in Alaska, but I'm not quite sure we were ready for that experience. But in any event, my parents came to settled in San Luis Obispo. My father took a job at Cal Poly. My mother, who had an advanced degree in the social sciences, took a job with the county, licensing foster homes as a social worker. And so they brought my 2 older sisters, who were both at the time under the age of 10, and they relocated to San Luis Obispo to start their new life. And you reflect back on this and you talk to them about why they did it, and for them the answer is simple. It was a chance for a better life, it was a chance to start anew, it was a chance to provide more to their children, more than they ever had, and that was very easy for them to do, based on what little they had when they came to the United States. But so we settled in, and you know, going to San Luis Obispo, it was predominantly white. There was virtually no Asian community at the time. When we moved there, there were some notable Asians in the community. They were of Chinese descent, and they were there relative to people who had either settled on farms or who had worked with the railroads. There was the old gentleman, Mr. Chong, who had the candy store in town. And then there was Ah Lewis, who was a very well-known figure in San Luis Obispo County. He had the local Chinese curio shop. But that was the extent of exposure to Asians, at least when my parents moved to San Luis Obispo in the 1960s. So they came to the United States, not really speaking the language well, having no family, having no support. And basically, though, they had some advantages which many of us and many of our family didn't have. They had secured jobs, they had a place to live, and they could start a new life. And that's saying quite a bit. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity that they had, even in light of everything that they had faced. Growing up in a non-English speaking household was always entertaining. My parents had great stories about what it was like first coming to the United States, and I want to share a couple of them with you. One of them that they tell me with great amusement is that of their introduction to avocados. Turns out in China, at least where my parents were growing up, there were no avocados. When they came to San Luis Obispo, some very friendly neighbors of theirs brought a basket of avocados and they set it on the front porch of my parents' house shortly after they had moved there. And these were unripe avocados. They left with a note saying enjoy, and that was about it. So my parents took this little basket of produce and they looked at it. They could knock the avocados on the floor, they were so hard. And so they're looking at these things going, well, it's clearly a produce of some type. We're incredibly frugal, it's not going to go to waste, but what do we do with this thing? And so they looked at it and they said, do you eat the peel or do you take it off? They cut it open, and the avocado itself was unripe, so you can imagine what that tasted like. They tried that, and they weren't quite sure what to do. They see this huge pit in the middle of the avocado, and they go, oh, this must be it. We must throw away the avocado and eat the pit. So they took a piece of the pit, and they tried that, and they knew that wasn't going to work. They had tried the peel. They had now tried the meat, and they had tried the pit, so they figured, all right, this thing's just not ready. We got to cook it. So they ended up cooking it I don't know how they cooked it. All I know is that it ended up being a disaster because after that experience, my parents would always graciously refuse to accept avocados from their friends. They thought those were the worst things in the world. And that's saying a lot for two immigrants who came from mainland China. My parents were also very frugal, and I think that's also a message that many immigrants try to impress upon their children. My parents didn't have a lot of money when they came here, and another anecdote is that of my parents, when they first got here, went to the grocery store, and they saw that you could buy chickens, whole chickens at the time, for less than $1, about 50 cents or so. And on sale days, you could actually get 3 chickens for $1. And in China, chickens were considered a delicacy. You only had chicken for a special occasion. You only had a whole chicken when there was something very special. You would slaughter a chicken, you'd buy it usually from a local farmer, and you would pay probably a day's wages for 1 chicken. My parents came to the United States and they could buy hundreds of chickens for a day's wages. So what did these frugal Chinese people do? They went out and promptly bought a huge freezer. One of those stand-up freezers. And my parents then went to the store and started filling that freezer full of chicken. They also noticed that if you go to the Wonder Bread bakery store on Thursdays, you could get 5 loaves of bread for $1. 5 loaves for $1, 3 chickens for $1, $2, and you got food for the week. $10, and you got food for the month. So what did my parents do? They would fill that freezer full of chickens. Well, chickens and bread. And I distinctly remember one time when I was very young, I think I was in 3rd or 4th grade, I brought some friends over, and we were playing, we wandered into the garage, and their first comment was, "Wow, you guys have a freezer. It must be full of ice cream." Or popsicles, or something really cool like that. And they got really excited, and they got me really excited, even though I knew what was in there. So we all ran over there and opened the door. They looked at all these chickens and all this bread, and I was kind of disappointed too, even though I knew it. I thought, oh, you're right, it's just chickens and bread. And I reflect on this, and I commented to my parents when I was a little older, and I said to them, "Hey Mom, hey Dad, how about we buy maybe 2 chickens at a time? We cook those chickens, we eat them, and then when we want more chicken, we go back to the store and we buy more chicken." And my dad's response to me, without missing a beat, was, "No, you just don't understand. You don't understand. The reason you don't understand is because you've never missed a meal. You've never not had food." And he said to me then, "That freezer represents comfort to me. That freezer gives me the comfort to go to bed at night. That's why we have all those chickens." And my response was, "Well, yeah, they're all getting freezer burned, and they're really gross. Maybe let's cut down on the level of chickens." So he did agree to do that. We did kind of diversify the freezer and get some ice cream in there. But it's very telling of the immigrant mentality. My parents, as I indicated, were very frugal, and they were frugal in many other ways. My mom bought a sewing machine when we came to the United States because it was expensive to buy clothes, but it was much less expensive to make clothes. She also decided that she would cut my hair and my dad's hair. She bought a pair of very sharp scissors and some electric trimmers, but she really had never cut hair before, so we had 2 options. You could either get the bowl cut, or you could get the short cut. And I think you can all figure out what I ultimately chose. My dad, who is 93 years old today, or is 93, has the same exact haircut as me. We've had that for the past 50 years. So frugality, that's something that was impressed upon me growing up. What they also impressed upon me was the need to work hard, to focus. This country presented great opportunity to them. They didn't want us to squander that opportunity. They wanted us to take advantage of it. And I'm not really saying anything that any of you haven't heard. I think all of us have heard from those who came before us, those who first settled here, just how important it is to buckle down, work hard, and achieve that goal. And it is achievable. And even as difficult as times can be these days, it is still achievable. But that's something that they impressed upon me. And that's something that I want you all to reflect on this month and even beyond this month, but it's something to think about today. So I've been asked to speak a little bit about how I became a judge. I think part of that evolution of me getting to the bench started with my parents. Started with having to live in a home of non-English speaking people and having to see them well-educated yet struggling on a regular basis just to communicate. Yes, they were fluent in their respective fields, but when it boiled down to having to read a contract to buy a car, or having to deal with a utility bill that was incorrect, or having to deal with local government, or we didn't have this situation, but having to go to court and maybe even respond to a jury summons. My parents struggled with those types of problems, for lack of a better term, because of their inability to master the language at that time. And so I saw, in some instances, how they were taken advantage of because of their inability to speak and understand their language. And I think that pushed me in a direction that ultimately led to me becoming an attorney. Now, part of that reason was also that I could not follow in my father's footsteps. I wanted to do something different. I also was not the science and math person that the stereotypical Asian is expected to be. And I think that's important to reflect on. There are stereotypes for all of us. And for me, getting pushed in that direction made me want to push back. And that's also what I think propelled me to go into the field of law. I truly do think the practice of law is a very noble profession. I think it is one in which you can right wrongs, you can level the playing field at times, and you can fix injustices. And you can be the voice for those who do not or would not necessarily have a voice otherwise. And so I like to think that that is the reason that I went into the practice of law, but it was also because I also wanted to go in an entirely different direction than what my parents suggested I go. And so in going there, what I did is I became a trial attorney, and I tried cases throughout the western United States in different courtrooms throughout this half of the country, and I spent a lot of time speaking on behalf of other people, trying to be the voice for other people, being the advocate. And I did that in large part because of the motivation by my parents to do that, to go out. And if you're going to do something, what they always told me is do it well, and don't be satisfied with what you did today. Prove yourself tomorrow, and continue to improve. And those are words that I take to heart and try to incorporate on a regular basis. So my transition to the role of an attorney to that of a judge was partly because I thought after 19 years of trying cases that I could get to that point where I felt that I even had the base knowledge that is necessary to sit on the bench. I also, having lived in Marin, wanted to practice or wanted to work in the community in which I lived. That was very important to me. So it was for those reasons that I did apply and send an application to the governor's office to try to get appointed here in Marin County. And I was fortunate enough to be appointed. And in getting appointed, one of the other reasons that I thought about this is that at the time the Marin bench did not have a lot of ethnic diversity on it. In fact, at the time that I applied, there was no ethnic diversity on the bench. And I wanted to change that as well, and I hoped that my appointment would change that. And upon being appointed, I'm happy to say that I derive a sense of comfort and satisfaction knowing that this face is on a bench when people walk into my courtroom. And they're seeing a face that is different from many of the other faces on the bench. I'd also like to point out the fact that the bench is even more diversified today. We have Judge Jacalyn Mah who's here, and he's a different face as well. And I think that's very important, and that reflects on our community. And that tells our community that we are receptive and we're open to the fact that we have other people, other community members here represented at the courthouse. And that continues and needs to continue. That needs to change even more. So that's something I reflect on in becoming a judge. And what I also think about is that during this time, Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, or Immigrants Month, this is a time for all of us to reflect on where we are, from where we came. It's a time to thank those who have provided for us to allow us to be where we are here today. And for me, it's a chance to thank my parents and to think back and to talk to them and remind them of what, or for them to remind me of what it took for them to provide us with this better life that I talk about. I think we can all do the same with respect to all of our families. I think it's also a time for all of us to take stock in what we're doing in terms of contributing to our community. I think it's important to remember that yes, we do all have different faces, and we are all working here in the county of Marin. Some of us live here, and we need to make a difference. All of you, all of us, are role models for our culture, for our people, and for our community. And we are examples, and we should lead by example. And I think starting this organization, Maple, is a great step. And I hope that this is the first of an annual event. I hope that this is the first of many, many speakers to come, and a chance to celebrate with all of you. I think it's something that we should continue. We always have to grow in that direction. And so I think it's something that we all have to remember. We have to lead by example, we have to be role models, and we, as a community, have to continue to contribute in any way we can. So, in closing, I just want to give you one more anecdote about my folks because I think it's very telling. We can all talk about adversity, we can all talk about bad experiences that we've had. So I want to leave this. At the time, this story that my mom tells us seems sad, and I think my mom kind of felt sorry when she tells this story, but she now laughs about it, and she thinks she's very proud of this, and it's just something that we can all think of. And that's when I was born. When I was born, my parents had just moved to San Luis Obispo. They had no support, no family, no friends, no one other than themselves. My sisters, as I indicated, were both under the age of 9. So when the time came for my mom to give birth to me, my dad loaded up his 57 Chevy Bel Air that he bought for $250 and put my sisters in the back of the car, drove my mom to the hospital, walked her into the hospital, turned around, walked back into the car where my sisters were, and drove my sisters home. So my mom checked herself into the hospital, and she said she went into the delivery room. She sat there. She was terrified. She was intimidated. She was afraid. She felt very alone. And yet she also says, I was so excited. I was going to have another child. We had just moved to this country. We had all this potential and all this hope. We had everything to look forward to. And so she says she looks back on that day and says, that is one of the most terrifying and the most fulfilling days of my life. And I think we can all think about those situations, those bittersweet memories that our immigrant family has had or has experienced. And I think we can all point to and talk and rattle those stories off at any given time. But it's reflective of what happened and what they went through. And I think it's also reflective of the idea, hey, I'm just going to accept this. She did feel a little sad, but she didn't feel so sad for herself that she didn't persevere and go and carry on. And that's what I think we all need to remember. Yes, we have bad days. Yes, we have times when things don't go our ways. But think back. Really? Really? Is it that difficult? You have problems with a coworker or something doesn't go your way? That doesn't mean that you're necessarily facing adversity. It's a different type of adversity, but reflect on it and think about what all of our generation before us and those who provided for us went through. And continue to go through it. Until that stops, we have a job to do. So, with that in mind, in closing, what I want you to reflect on this month in which we acknowledge our heritage, we take stock in it, and we make some commitments. I want you all to make some commitments to go out there. I want you to make commitments to be better today than you were yesterday. And I want you to go out there and be role models for all of us. Because in that way, we can make tomorrow a better day for all of us. And I think that's what I take from this month to reflect. So thank you for inviting me to be here today. I really enjoyed speaking to all of you, and I turn this over now back to Tom.
Thank you for that very inspirational story. The one that definitely resonated with me. Hard work, frugality, and looks like our parents should compare notes on homegrown haircuts, since I too am a product of that. Although in my household it's not chickens, it's apples. It's 10 pounds for $1, and we would stock up on apples because they do last a long time. But anyway, I want to acknowledge a few folks in the audience today. We have Supervisor Sears, Board of Supervisors, joining us. And I'd like to acknowledge and introduce our second Vice President to the Board of Supervisors this year, ex-President, and currently Supervisor for the 1st District, Susan Adams. who have to share a few points of wisdom with you.
I loved the stories. Those were great. I have a couple of my own stories, but first I want to say congratulations on the launch of this organization. I think it's really important that we celebrate the incredible wealth of diversity that we have here at the county, and I think it's getting better all the time. And I love food at all of the events. Obviously, I'm not suffering from lack of eating great food. So the words I wanted to share with you relate back to my family heritage. I'm a fifth generation San Franciscan, and my great-great-grandmother delivered babies in San Francisco during the Barbary Coast era. And there were a lot of immigrants coming in during that time. She had 7 boys and 1 girl. That girl, the youngest, was my great-grandmother. And during the 1906 earthquake, when their house burnt down in the Mission District, half the family went to Alameda, and the other half camped in Golden Gate Park. And my great-grandfather, who happened to be a sergeant in the Chinatown Police Department, who could speak, he was a little white guy who could speak Chinese fluently. And the stories are that he got all kinds of great ducks and chickens and things because people loved him. Well, he was in charge of the campgrounds, and he and my great-grandmother met. And if it hadn't been for that earthquake, I wouldn't be here. But the stories of the beauty of the Asian culture and everything came through my family, even though not that I know of, that I may or may not have any Chinese heritage in me, because I've got a lot of stuff in me. But the stories that were told, and the whole sense of family, and the importance of giving back to community, and that community was important, were values that came through my family from the Chinese American culture that had settled in San Francisco at that time. And then I reflect on, now that we have all of this DNA science, there's all kinds of people finding out they have all kinds of things in them that they never knew they had. And that if we really take a look at who we are as individuals and as a community, really there's not a whole lot that separates us from what the things are that are valuable to us. That we have meaning in our life, that we have strong, healthy families, that we have work that's valuable and of value to us, and that each of us has different kinds of food that we eat, maybe different kinds of clothes that we wear, but it's all about all of our boats floating well together and learning from each other on the best of who we are. So I celebrate this day and all the others that are going to be coming. Our board unanimously passed a resolution honoring this month, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you, Susan. So May is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and early this week the board passed a resolution that Ralph Hernadez would like to kind of read for you. So here you go, Ralph.
Go, Ralph.
So I'll just read this. Resolution of the Board of Supervisors of Marin County proclaiming Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, May 2014. Whereas the Marin Asian American Public Local Employee, MAPLE, was founded in December 2013 by a group of county employees whose mission is to promote professional development, provide a social network, and celebrate Asian Pacific Islander heritage for Asian American public employees in Marin County. And whereas May was chosen to commemorate the immigration of the first Japanese immigrants to the United States in 1843. And whereas many immigrants of Asian heritage came to the United States during the 19th century to work in the California gold rush and the transportation industry. And whereas in 1869, laboring under difficult conditions, Asian immigrants helped construct the Transcontinental Railroad, which vastly expanded economic growth and development across the country. And whereas in 1978, a joint congressional resolution was established Asian Pacific Heritage Week, and in 1990, Congress expanded the observance to a month-long celebration. And whereas over 14,000 Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders live in the county of Marin, and of the roughly 2,000 county Marin employees, 8.4% are Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And whereas we value our diversity and dedication and hard work of Asian Americans and Pacific Islander. And whereas we also honor the millions of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders who, through their wisdom, diverse talents, courage, and loyalty, have made this a stronger and greater nation. And whereas Asian Americans and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is a celebration of diversity and a time to celebrate the unique value that can be found in all of us. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Marin hereby proclaim the month of May 2014 as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, passed and adopted at a regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Marin held this 20th day of May 2014, and signed by President Sears and, of course, Supervisor Adams. Thank you.
Thanks for that. So now that we've kind of come full circle to this country, I got a trivia question for y'all. There's over 300 million people in the United States today. Would you venture to guess how many are of Asian or Asian Pacific kind of heritage, origin? How many million? There's 300 million in the US. Any guesses? Oh? There's 19 million. So that's a little bit less than 6%. Yeah. Next, I have a real treat for you. I do want to thank Adora Gutierrez, one of our organizing members, for finding the musician. You may have heard some music serenade you as you were coming into this chambers today. I'd like to introduce Rudy Viernes, the gentleman here to my left here. He's going to give you a very special performance of some patriotic and some folk Filipino songs using his harmonica and the beautiful harmonies that come from it. So Rudy, would you like to take the podium, or we can set you up here?
Well, thanks in the first place for your invitation through Dora Gutierrez, a friend and fellow member of PANCO. PANCO is Filipino Americans of Northern California organization, members of which come or reside in Marin, Sonoma, and Solano. We have been in existence for about 30 years, and we have had a lot of activities like civic activities like providing aid to typhoon victims in the Philippines, and other cultural and scholarship. So I was requested to come here to play this little instrument. Actually, I was prepared to play for about 15-30 minutes, but when I think Tom said that time is of the essence, so he begged me if I could cut it to 5 minutes. So I begged him if could I increase it to 5.5 minutes. He gave me 6 minutes. So without much ado, I'd like to play, some patriotic songs, love songs, old melodies, and my favorite Filipino songs in medley. Here comes. song was made very popular by Nat King Cole, Mona Lisa. Frank Sinatra came out with his favorite melody. Think you know the song? You know this song? I hear this song. I like to play some Filipino old folk songs in a medley. So they come in sequence. Then after that, I will end.
Rudy Viernes. Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you. Next, I want to introduce the short film that Ralph is going to kind of set up for us to kind of screen. Every now and then, you catch something in the news about racial profiling or some alleged direct or indirect discrimination directed at ethnic minorities in this country. The film we'd like to share with you today is a story that draws attention to a dark chapter in American history where tens of thousands of Americans were incarcerated because of the color of their skin. This short film reinforces the relevance of this event to us today and brings with it much needed insight into the lessons from the past in this post 9/11 world that we live in. So with that introduction, Ralph, play. Before we finish the celebration, if you're interested in joining Maple, we have a sign-up list there. There's a listserv that you can sign up for. We also have a Facebook page and a website, marinmaple.com.
Org.
Marinmaple.org. Thank you, Chairman Mah. Anyway, so the time has come to bring today's celebration to a close. Thank you again for coming. So without further ado, goodbye. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you, everyone.